So, in the last video, I discussed what I believe are some of the conditions that are established in scriptures that can help us come to touch on one thing at a time. So, that passage of scripture that we've talked about in a couple videos now, that wherever two or three disciples are gathered in the name of Christ, touching one thing, he's promised that he will be in our midst. So I'm kind of paraphrasing there. I want to start off this video with this story of the disciples on the road to Emmaus, where this promise was fulfilled to them, that as they were laboring and discussing things together and reasoning together, that Christ actually showed up in very deed. So in the passage, it says that the two of them, they went that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was about from Jerusalem 60 furlongs. And they talked together of all the things which had happened. And it came to pass that while they spoke together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were held and covered, that they could not know him. And he said unto them, What manner of communications are these which you have one with another as you walk and are sad? So this happened after the crucifixion of Christ, and obviously after he was resurrected, but they were not aware yet that he had risen from the dead. This is a great example of what is possible when we meet the conditions of the Lord that he's established. That includes how we talk with one another. That includes how our hearts are postured towards each other. Are we equals, or are we being condescending? Are we putting other people on pedestals, or are we being childlike and approaching each other as equals? So I think this is a good example of what is possible, and it fulfills the promise that he gave to them, to his disciples earlier. So I want to address what clarifying questions are. So after a teacher or a presenter has shared a precept or teaching, so we're on the road to Emmaus, one person has shared something, the small group may begin asking questions to the teacher. So note, this is just the initial phase of asking clarifying questions. It is not quite reasoning together. Rather, it's like a bridge to move from the precept to the reasoning. So if we're on the road to Emmaus and one among us is playing the role of teacher and they share a precept, they share an idea, before we can even reason with one another, we need to make sure that we understand what is being shared. And that's what clarifying questions are for. So just as the teacher labored to prepare themselves to present the lesson, the students will now need to labor to understand what the teacher is teaching. And this does not mean agreement or disagreement, only seeking clarity. Those who have been actively listening can labor with the teacher by asking clarifying questions, testing assumptions, and seeking clarity about what is being presented. Clarifying questions help the group remain focused on touching upon the one thing being presented and on qualifying to have the Lord's presence in their midst. Scripture shows us that this is how the Lord himself initiates reasoning with us. He asks us questions and labors to provide us with understanding. So consider the role of active listeners. So we've talked about the role of the teacher in the past video. So now the active listeners. Active listeners suspend judgment. They ask clarifying questions. They test assumptions and restrain from refuting conclusions. Okay, so whatever the teacher's taught, they're just seeking to understand it. They're not trying to refute it or overthrow it or create counter arguments. They protect the one thing being presented, whether they agree or disagree, while they move forward to reason over it. And they do their part in the group labor to qualify for edification and the Lord's presence. So this is about our hearts, and how we proceed must be as noble as the cause that we seek, is what the Lord has commanded. And even if our brother errs in his understanding, we can still view him with charity. And it's up to the Lord and light and truth to correct. The Spirit of truth is what corrects our errors, and not us. We need to make sure that it's the Spirit of truth. So notice that none of these involve agreement, evaluation, or persuasion. This is the labor that precedes reasoning. So how is clarifying questions different than evaluative questions? So any questions that are asked to measure, judge, or challenge what is being said before we understand what has been established by the teacher would be evaluative questions. So questions like, don't you think that's incorrect? Or how does that align with, isn't that a dangerous idea? Why would you believe that? Doesn't this contradict? Right? These are all examples of questions that kind of demonstrate that the listener, we have jumped to conclusions, maybe formed impartial judgment of what is being shared, and they're being asked before we've sought to clarify our understanding of what's being presented. So what are clarifying questions? Clarifying questions are questions asked to hear, understand, and be edified before judging, disputing, or persuading. Clarifying questions can help, like, can you help me understand what you mean by, or when you say blank, how are you using that word? Is that what you're saying, or am I missing something? Are you describing an experience, a principle, or a conclusion? So these questions, or questions like this, are more open-ended and allow the teacher to express themselves and clarify, and they don't force the teacher to take a defensive posture in the group setting. So I just want to point out before I end this video that these kind of questions are more in harmony with the language that is found in T&C 157, which says various things, but like, study how to learn to respect your brothers and sisters, be humble, patient, and easily persuaded. I want my people to have understanding. It mentions that we've spoken poorly, although we've intended well. There's the command that we measure our words before giving voice to them, and that we consider the hearts of others. So things like that in T&C 157 kind of support this concept of asking clarification questions before we begin evaluating the precept and reasoning. And in the next video, that's what we're going to talk about, is how the group will move into a reasoning stage where now we're reasoning on the precept, and we're discussing and comparing what was taught to light and truth that we have in the Scriptures.